Good morning, everyone. Thank you to be here and to be part of this webinar, named A Conversation with Bombardier, Opportunities Toward the Future. 2020 was a really challenging year with a lot of challenges that remain in the industry. So in order to have a conversation with industry leaders of Bombardier, we prepared this webinar so we can discuss the role that Mexico is going to play in the whole industry, not only in Mexico, but all around the world. I am glad to present you two of our industry leaders that are going to share with you in the next hour good insight related the bottlenecks that the industry is facing. So that being said, I would like you to introduce to our key speakers and also want to let you know that the question box will be open the whole session so that you can share your concerns, your questions, your doubts, your opinions, and we are going to try to answer them as much as we can at the end of the session. I also want to let you know that you are going to see in your screen a poll of questions so you can also share with us your opinions. We want to know what your thoughts are so we can make richer this conversation about the future of the industry. Meanwhile, I would like you to introduce to our speakers. We are going to have the presence of Mr. Mark Maslow. Mark is the Director of Public Affairs and Communications at Bombardier Aviation. He is going to be with us in the next hour, having this conversation with Mr. Humberto Moa, Sales Director of Mexico, Central America, and Caribbean of Bombardier Business Aircraft. As I was telling to you before I pass the stage to our leaders, please, I ask my colleague Hannah to share with you the poll questions that we prepared to you so you can also share with us your insights and your opinions. Okay, the first speaker of this session will be Mr. Humberto. I will leave the stage to him so you can start. And please let me know, Humberto, the moment that you want me to continue operating the slides and also the video that we prepare for you.
Okay, very good. Hello, everyone. My name is Humberto Moas, also known as Bert in the industry. I am the sales director for new and pre-flown aircraft sales. We are proud to have the widest and most diverse portfolio of business aircraft among any OEM in the world. We have three aircraft families, the Learjet, the Challenger, and the Global family. Each are industry leading and in their performance and cabin experience. And next slide, please. Bombardier business jets, we're basically present all around the world. Here's some of the interesting facts about who we are and what we do. We currently have about 142 aircraft delivered in 2019. That's pretty interesting numbers. We also, around the world, a Bombardier aircraft takes off and lands every 3 seconds, basically. We also have about 4,800 aircraft in service worldwide. Additionally, in Latin America is the world's third largest market for business aviation. Bombardier Aviation has been in the market leader for deliveries, the light, the medium, the large and category aircrafts in Latin America for the past 10 years, from 2010 to 2019, with about 30% of the market share. That's pretty amazing. In Latin America, there are about 50 global aircrafts. There's 123 Challenger aircrafts and about 401 Learjets worldwide operating. Basically, Bombardier has 31% of the business jet market share in Mexico, which is quite interesting, excluding obviously the light jets, which is an area where we do not compete or participate in. There are currently 223 Bombardier business jets in Mexico today, including 5 Globals, 53 Challengers, and 165 Learjet aircraft. That's quite amazing. Additionally, Bombardier has a growing worldwide maintenance network, including 9 service centers And Bombardier service centers in Florida, for example, Texas, Kansas, and Arizona are convenient service points for many Latin American customers. Customers based in Latin America have especially easy access to Bombardier service centers in Florida. The Fort Lauderdale Service Center, which will soon be moving to Opalaca in Miami, is fully equipped to perform scheduled and unscheduled maintenance, aircraft modifications, avionics installations, and aircraft on-ground support, AOGs, for all Bombardier family business jets, including Learjet, Challenger, and Global aircraft. And Mark, now I pass it on to you.
Thanks very much, Bert. So I'm Mark Maslick. I'm Director of Public Affairs and Communications for Bombardier Aviation. So all of our manufacturing facilities, many of which are in Mexico and Canada, in the US, and service facilities around the world, as Bert described on the map. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about Bombardier's presence in Mexico. So Bert told you about our very impressive and large fleet of installed business jets, but Mexico is a really special place for Bombardier because it's also home to some of our key manufacturing activities for aerostructures. The company arrived in Mexico along with a wave of development in the national aerospace industry in Mexico. And we've now grown to employ 1,600 people in Querétaro. And we have invested a total of about $500 million US in constructing our various plants and operations. Those plants and operations have grown to 6 buildings across 3 sites throughout Querétaro and Chihuahua. So we have developed a very proud base of employees who are contributing to a lot of the aircraft, if not most of the aircraft that fly above the Mexican skies and internationally from Mexico. Bombardier is an aircraft manufacturer, so we deliver end-to-end services for our customers. And we're the first type of this company that we call an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer, to set foot in Mexico. And with this, we've developed a very good collaboration and have received very fantastic support from the industry, the aero cluster, the regulatory authorities, and academia. All of these groups have to work together to really develop that aerospace industry, to create jobs, create training programs so that we can contribute to both the economy and local employment. So because of this collaboration, we've really helped in identifying the industry needs and how to create and develop requirements for the workforce. So over our 15 years in Mexico, we've been able to really establish a solid manufacturing presence. And it's not just a question of having parts that are built for jets. You know, Mexico has really become one of our standout locations in terms of product quality. So over such a brief time in the grand scheme of the jet age that has occurred for the last 50, 60 years, in 15 years, Mexico has become one of the leading sources of part quality for us at Bombardier, and very often work packages at the site in Mexico are standouts in terms of their quality. So it's a true testament to the willingness of the people, both that work at Bombardier in the various different aero clusters, to really bring Mexico to the forefront of a worldwide aviation industry, not just from a supply-based perspective, but from a manufacturing perspective as well. So if we can go to the next slide, and I can deep dive a little bit more on how on our manufacturing capabilities. So we right now manufacture complex aerostructures, so very large components, the largest being the aft fuselage for the Global family of aircraft. It includes the Global 7500, which is the industry's flagship aircraft. It is the largest and longest reaching aircraft currently on the market. And these capabilities are very relevant because, considering our first capabilities in Mexico were electrical harnesses, you can see how it's grown from components to major structures of the aircraft that demand the highest levels of quality, engineering precision, and workmanship. So Bombardier Aviation Mexico, as we call our installations there, is recognized as a manufacturing center within the company that really reflects the commitment to quality and the standards that we've set around the world. So our employees continue to strive for the top KPIs of excellence, whether it's on-time deliveries, quality, product integrity, and really are also at the forefront of improving our efficiency and processes. So I'd like to take a moment to recognize our team in Mexico for their dedication, their professionalism, and that to reinforce that a lot of the people that work for Bombardier in Mexico have contributed to some of the aircraft programs that have shaped business aviation, that are continuing to shape business aviation. And as we get through these more difficult times, certainly our industry is poised to recover. We already see very positive trends in that respect that I'm happy to touch on a little bit later. But certainly the people who work at Bombardier have a key part to play in that recovery. So with that, I'd like to turn it back to Bert, who can tell you a little bit more about the portfolio itself and certainly how the Mexican team contributes to that as well.
Well, thanks again, Mark. I appreciate it. I'd like to now give you a quick overview of our aircraft portfolio. I'm going to start with the flagship of Bombardier, and indeed the flagship of the entire industry. The Global 7500 is the largest and longest range business jet in the world, with four distinct cabin living areas and a cabin filled with innovations. This aircraft is leading the way forward and is redefining what is possible in a business jet. Of particular importance is the role that Mexico plays with the production of these parts in Mexico. For example, Mexico manufactures the rear fuselage, which is the most complex system manufactured in Mexico aerospace industry. The tail cone section, the avionics capsule, the passenger door, for example, the sheet metal parts, the air-driven generator door, the composite part of it, the main harness for electrical wiring. These are major components are being manufactured in Querétaro. The aircraft also, if we could go to the next slide, has an amazing range of 7,700 nautical miles. And here's an overview of where you can fly nonstop from Mexico City. When we say Mexico City, we're really talking about Toluca. Toluca has an elevation of 8,700 feet. So therefore, it makes it very challenging for these airplanes, whichever airplane that operates in Toluca, because of the high and hot altitude. So therefore, from Mexico City, if we can go to the next slide, please. You can go all the way across the Pacific Ocean to Fiji or New Zealand. It's truly exceptional. And going forward, the next airplane in the global family is the Global 5500. It's also part of the aircraft family. And the Global 5500 and Global 6500, they also have a range. They're the range leaders in their class, basically, with an important manufacturing component as well in Mexico. Mexico manufactures, just for example, on both of these products, the rear fuselage, the tail cone, the slats, the baggage door, cockpit subsystems, sheet metal parts, composites, and again, the main electrical harness. They're very similar in size. Obviously, they have different ranges. So if we go to the next slide, you will see the range on the Global 5500. And here's a quick look and an impressive 5,900 nautical mile range for the Global 5500 aircraft out of Mexico City, again, Toluca. So it's quite amazing that you could almost go anywhere in the world with maybe one stop. As we go through to the next slide on the Global 6500, here's where the Global 6500 aircraft can take you with a range of 6,600 nautical miles. You can go from Mexico City all the way into Europe, way deep into Europe. If we go to the next slide, I'd like to present to you the Challenger 350. In this aircraft, for example, the 350 aircraft holds the coveted title of best-selling super mid-size business jet for 6 consecutive years, capturing 43% of market share in 2019. That's an incredible feat. We celebrated the delivery of the 350th Challenger 350 earlier this year. And we're extremely proud of this aircraft and our facility in Querétaro, which plays a large role in this success. For example, Mexico manufactures the flap, the ailerons, flap supports, the leading edge, sheet metal parts and components, the wheel bins, the composite portion of it. Additionally, we also do the flap hinge fairing details in composite, radome details in composite as well, the composite parts in general, flap hinge fairings, cockpit panels, main harnesses. In essence, we do quite a bit of work on the Challenger 350 in Querétaro. If we could go on to the next slide, we can share with you the range again from Mexico City. You can see that basically you're addressing all of North and Central America and part of South America. with a range of 3,200 nautical miles while carrying 8 passengers and a full load of fuel. This is incredible. It can take you all the way from North America and fly south to Peru. The next aircraft I'd like to introduce you to is the Challenger 650. And if you could go on to the next slide, it'd be great. The Challenger 650 is another aircraft winning offering from Bombardier. It's one of the longest platforms that we've had in Bombardier for many, many years, starting from a Challenger 600 with the evolution all the way through to a Challenger 650. The Mexico part of the fabrication process also participates in the fabrication of the rudder, the tail tank, the vertical bucket, the saddle tanks, and the sheet metal parts also contributing to the rest of the aircraft. The composites, which plays a big part in the Mexico Querétaro plant, is dedicated to the vertical stab details, empennage details, aft detached panels, wheel bins, flap hinges, radome, a lot of stuff that happens in Querétaro that is attributed to the Challenger 650. And again, the wiring harnesses, which is basically throughout all of the aircrafts in our fleet. If we go on to the next slide, we can show you the range from the Challenger 650. You can see it's a little bit more range than the Challenger 350. You basically address all of North America, again, the Caribbean, Central America, and a good portion of South America. The 650 has an outstanding range of 4,000 nautical miles. This aircraft can take you even further. If we go on to the next slide, I'd like to also introduce you to the Learjet 75 Liberty, which is basically an icon in itself. If you talk to any pilot in the industry, if they haven't flown a Learjet, they wish they would be flying a Learjet. So of course, there's no discussion about this portfolio without mentioning the iconic Learjet. This is the best light jet out there with better range and performance than any other light jet out there. The Learjet 75 Liberty, which is Bombardier's newest Learjet, entered service in October. It has a beautiful spacious cabin, and its price point makes it accessible to more light jet operators than ever before. This aircraft, which is built in Wichita, Kansas, and is famous throughout the world for being the first ever business jet, it launched the industry back in 1963. So if we go on to the next slide, you can see what the Learjet 75 offers. Now, in the Liberty, you have 2 options. We can offer the 6-seated configuration with a lavatory, which makes it 7 seats. It's a very comfortable and spacious cabin. Or you can go with the 8-seaters, which is 2 club seat configurations, which gives you more capacity as far as the Learjet 75. This Liberty, for example, has a range of 2,080 nautical miles. And as you can see, that takes you from Mexico City to almost anywhere in the United States and also into South America. This is the longest range among the light jet category. The Learjet owners love their aircraft, and we're so pleased to be introducing a new Learjet to the light jet market. So now that you know a little bit more about our products, I'll be turning things back over to Mark. So Mark, you take the baton, my friend.
Thank you very much, Bert. And I think I'd like to really now touch on what 2020 has been for Bombardier and for the rest of the world. Obviously, the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic is fresh atop everyone's minds. It's really most of what we see and hear about in the news, but more fundamentally for us, if I can put it in simple terms, it's forced us to almost relearn how we do business, to retrain a lot of our employees from a health and safety perspective, from a process perspective, and we had to very quickly adapt to the pandemic's evolution. So if you can go to the next slide, I'll get into a little bit more details about that. So, you know, you've heard a lot of people say that 2020 has been unprecedented. It's a word I hear a lot, but for us, it's true, especially when you think about the different jurisdictions that Bombardier operates in. So we touched about having aircraft completions in Canada and the US, having various aerostructures facilities throughout those geographies as well, including Mexico. We had to adapt not only to one site having, you know, a crisis in a specific geography. Because this was a global pandemic, we had to take a step back and look at how each of our sites was interacting. each jurisdiction, each country for their specific health and safety response had different timings as the pandemic was evolving, had different procedures. So we really took a step back and prioritized safety first for our employees. So the first level of response was implementing very strict protocols at some of our sites. And in some cases, the protocols were stricter than what people were being asked to do in public. But it was very important that we maintain that level of integration across international borders, just so we can continue to operate. In some cases, north of Mexico and Canada, for instance, we did have to close factories temporarily to a certain extent based on government mandates, and then had to demonstrate that we are able to operate and continue to work with very strict health and safety rules in a pandemic context where there are still active cases being transmitted in the population and in society, whereas we have to make sure that that doesn't happen within our sites as we continue to deliver aircraft. And we've shown that we can continue to deliver aircraft safely with a lot of rework. So we've changed shift schedules, we've implemented distancing, personal protective equipment is mandatory. There's really a laundry list of initiatives that have taken hold for employees like myself who are working from home. We're teleconferencing a lot more. We're joining all of the different digital platforms that we can to continue to reinforce that we are at the forefront of all of these healthy safety initiatives in aerospace. And at the end of the day, safety is really our top priority. We're really proud of how our employees have embraced this. And if you can click to the next slide, please. You can just see that the culture of safety is something that runs deep in aviation from an air safety perspective, but health and safety at each of our sites really has risen to that level over this year and this pandemic. And you can see here a few examples of our team members in Mexico who really take the steps required to stay safe throughout their workday, even though that requires wearing a mask the entire time they're in the facility. And I do want to commend everyone for their resilience around this and taking charge of the new processes. So with that, we effectively relearned how to operate over the first few months of the pandemic and created a new normal that has allowed us to continue our business throughout the year. So if you click to the next slide, some of the milestones we've celebrated this year was the entry into service of the Global 5500 aircraft. The first one entered service, and of course, Bert mentioned what part of that aircraft is built in Mexico. And finally, most recently, the Learjet 75 Liberty entered service. So again, these were all digital launches. We've had to take a shift from an industry that really enjoyed gatherings, putting people in a hangar, celebrating an aircraft, to finding new ways of reaching out to our customer base, to our stakeholders, to our suppliers who are key on these types of aircraft programs, and to our facilities who feed into them. Because gatherings are difficult, we've shifted how we conduct those types of handover ceremonies, which for the life of a program which could have 20, 25 years of deliveries ahead of it is still a significant milestone and deserves to be celebrated because of the ingenuity that was placed into the aircraft, but also as a thanks to our customers who themselves have continued to operate and take deliveries during the pandemic. So there's a lot of thanks to go around, but of course that all has to be done digitally. And if you go to the next slide, please, that really has fundamentally changed how we sell aircraft, which is our core business. We've created virtual showrooms, we've created virtual, what we call a needs assessment tool. And of course, we're participating in virtual air shows, such as VBase, which is coming up in the next week. So NBAA has organized that, and we're finding new ways to connect to people through these shows. So we're offering virtual walkthroughs of our aircraft by appointment. So if you can't come to a tarmac, enter a plane, and interact with our team, we have set up ways for our team to be able to take customers on a one-on-one tour of the aircraft. So Bert and the rest of the sales team do offer these tours as part of these events. And our customers successfully walked through, asked the questions that they usually would in person rather. And we're able to reach out to the general public with these virtual platforms really on a scale that we haven't before, because air shows have always been, closed events from a privacy perspective, from a capacity perspective. So these platforms are having the added benefit of not only showing, our aircraft to the general public, it's a way for our employees in remote sites to also connect to the end product, In some sites, they'll manufacture parts of the plane and they'll never really get a chance to touch the final product. So this is one way of reaching out to those sites. So that's been almost an added benefit if there could be such a thing in these difficult times. So at the end of the day, I do encourage you to visit our website. These tools are available, and we're of course always evolving them to make sure that they are best in the industry. So whether it's the virtual showroom, the aircraft configurator, where you can take your own stab at implementing an aircraft interior, you're more than welcome to visit our site. And if you can go to the next slide, please. So really what we're seeing from an industry perspective is encouraging signs in terms of aircraft utilization. So Bombardier, to track the industry, looks at the third-party data that analysts produce. We also very closely track high-volume airports for business aviation. So Bert mentioned Toluca. In the US, there are a lot of airports that are specifically geared for business aviation, and the travel trends have come back in terms of volume and flights much faster than commercial aviation. So we see business aviation being on a leadership position with regards to traffic and utilization coming out of the pandemic, and we're already seeing very positive signs of that. That's also transferred to more quarterly deliveries for Bombardier as we've progressed through the pandemic. So we're ramping back up. Last quarter, the third quarter for 2020, we delivered the most Global 7500 aircraft that we've ever delivered as a company. So we've been on a progressive ramp up of that program and really have reached a very satisfactory cadence and hoping to continue on that push as we're now in our final quarter of the year and then entering next year where we're going to continue to execute on that program's very, very stable and large backlog. And finally, in terms of our products have already been very well geared towards the recovery, but a lot of product features now are coming much more on the forefront of importance. So we talk about the cabin air and what we call pure air. So on our aircraft, people wonder about, how do you stay 12, 13 hours aboard an aircraft like the Global 7500, not necessarily always being able to be 6 feet apart from people in this type of context. And one of the things that the Global 7500 does so well is it has, a fully developed suite of solutions for cabin air, whether it's fresh air that's recirculated through a HEPA filter or cabin air replacement from outside. The Global does really everything. So people have the option in the cabin to either recirculate their air through a filtration system that gets rid of about 99.99% really of allergens and viruses, or continue to replace the cabin air from outside. That also has the benefit of being able to cool down or heat up the cabin very quickly. So with that, I think we have a pure air video that we can cut to, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll be right back with you. Thank you very much. So it is very important to note that systems like pure air were already on board our aircraft before the pandemic, because Bombardier places a very high value on passenger wellness, whether it's how you sit, how you eat, how you interact with the lighting system on board the aircraft, to the air recirculation and circulation systems. It's something that is part of the core comfort offering and safety offering of our business jets. And in this past year, we've received so many more questions and inquiries about how all of these systems work, and they've become really the forefront of our marketing campaigns with our customers. And finally, we'll go to I'll talk a little bit about sustainability. Because that, coming out of the pandemic, is going to be a very important topic. So if you can click to the next slide, please. So sustainability in our industry obviously is something that a lot of people ask about or concerned about, because aircraft are seen as being polluters, when in reality they constitute a very small percentage of worldwide CO2 emissions. That said, just because we're a very small percentage in the single digits doesn't mean we don't have a commitment and a responsibility to improve our emissions footprint, but also really to contribute to stewardship of climate change and bettering all of these footprints. So that started with a lot of concrete actions that we've undertaken. It's really all encompassing. So we're looking at accelerating that journey towards carbon neutrality across the industry. So we're participating in various forums where we've set specific targets and a concrete action plan to reach this, because it's not just done through technology of the aircraft and continuing to build better aircraft that emit less. There's a whole system around it that has to change. Part of that is sustainable aviation fuel becoming more prevalent in day-to-day use. But at the same time, we have to look at our facilities. We have to look at how we operate our aircraft, and finally, how we build our aircraft. So really 80% of a product's footprint in terms of its life cycle, in terms of CO2 emissions, is determined at the design of the product itself. So a lot of the key decisions we make at the outset will shape that product's environmental footprint and life cycle. So with the Global 7500, which is our latest clean sheet product, we started the process at the very highest level, and at the end we achieved what we call a Type 3 environmental product declaration. What that is, it's a certified document by an independent body that validates the calculations that we make on how much energy is required to produce the aircraft, what type of energy is required to produce it. So for instance, in Canada, we benefit a lot from hydroelectricity to go into the product, all the way down to how we source the materials, what materials we use, and what's their profile for recyclability at the end of the product life. On top of this, it also factors in emissions. So when customers purchase an aircraft from Bombardier, we're able to provide this document that shows the full impact of the product. It's something that you see a lot in consumer technology. You might see telephone manufacturers or smartphone manufacturers issue these types of declarations on their products, but really it is the first step in full transparency on environmental matters. And that makes our plan to reduce our emissions much more poignant, because we're reducing them from a part that is well known and documented. And that way, when we make gains in terms of use of SAF, offsetting, or other general initiatives to upgrade facilities to reduce their footprint, it really is based on a concrete plan. And business aviation is one of the few industries that has a stated concrete plan around that. And I'm very proud, and Bombardier is very proud to contribute to these industry-wide initiatives. So that's it for today. Certainly, if you'd like to get in touch with us at the site, we can provide site contact details for anyone who would be interested in our products. Umberto's and Bert's contact details are on the screen now. And with that, I'd like to sincerely thank you for taking the time to hear about Bombardier, our products, our journey over 2020. And I'd like to turn it back to the moderator. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, we'll be turning it to some Q's and A's. So Franco, if you have questions for the audience for us, we're all ears.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. That was a really interesting presentation. I really would like to thank Bombardier to Mark, to Bert, to be part of this, and of course, all the team of Bombardier that participate and coordinate this webinar. The inside information that you share with us is really important, and now it's time to hear the audience. As I was saying at the beginning, we prepare a poll for you that is going to pop up right now in your screen. That is going to take you just 1 minute, so we can know a little bit more about your thoughts of the industry now that you already hear the conversation with Humberto and with Mark. So as you can see right now, the poll is in your screen. So feel free to share with us your thoughts.
Mark, if you'd like to tackle the first one, feel free. If not, let me know how you'd like to treat it.
Absolutely. So, Franco, are we ready to answer the first questions that we see here in the Q&A portal?
Well, yes, we have one question on behalf of the audience. Let me open them. See, we have the first question for Mr. Alberto Chotin. He's asking, is it possible to have a flyaway Bombardier aircraft from Mexico in the future?
Thanks for the question, Alberto. I think obviously it's in relation to, can we build a full aircraft tail to tail in Mexico? It's difficult to say or put a time prediction on that. It's obviously in terms of capability, something that's growing in the Mexican aerospace cluster, in terms of regulatory requirements to build an aircraft end to end would require a lot of collaboration from the authorities, which we are getting. So the talent and the skill set certainly is developing in a direction that could lead to that. In terms of a Bombardier aircraft, right now we're really looking at our entire worldwide footprint and how to optimize it to get to profitability on the outside of the pandemic based on where the market's going. So I don't see how that could impact in the short term, but certainly if you're looking at the core of it being capabilities, it's possible. How we're looking at our plans right now, I would say it would be difficult to make a commitment on a short-term basis.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. It was a really interesting insight. We still have some other questions in the row, and also I would like to encourage all the people to share with us all the concerns, all the questions that you would like to put in the discussion. We have another question that says that how can Mexican aerospace companies enter to Bombardier's supply chain, and what does Bombardier need from Mexican suppliers?
Well, right now we have a lot in a lot of the areas that we operate, really good relationships with existing suppliers. In terms of what Bombardier requires from a supply base is simple. It's consistency, it's quality, and on-time delivery. Those are the things that really make up our integrated network that spans multiple countries. So how to enter, it's pretty simple. You can definitely reach out to our representatives to see how your product would be fit into our supply chain, and if it doesn't respond to a current RFP or request for proposal that we would have put out to the industry through the various associations, how to establish perhaps a longer term relationship with us. So for instance, perhaps after this session, we could share my colleague in Mexico's, Jimena Luna's contact information, who can direct local suppliers to the right people here in Mexico.
All right, very good. We have another question related to the Mexican market. How does the Mexican market is different from other markets in Latin America region?
I can answer that question. I think that the Mexican market's been around for many, many, many years. It's one of the top markets in Latin America. In fact, there's two countries that produce the most out of all of Latin America, Mexico being one of them, Brazil being the second one. It's always a toss-up between one and first place and second place, but Mexico has been a steady customer for many years, operating our executive jets, and not just ours, but the competition as well. So I would say that the influence in travel in Mexico has every year it been evolving more and more, and especially now more than ever with the pandemic, has created new concept buyers to come on board and experience the feeling of having their own aircraft versus having to wait in a line and go through commercial air travel. So Mexico is probably the #1 market in Latin America today.
Okay, that is pretty interesting. We have another question that is a little bit related to the presentation that you already gave us. That is, so maybe you can go a little bit deep on this topic, which is how have your operation in Mexico been impacted by the COVID-19, and when do you believe the local market will recover to pre-pandemic levels?
So I think I'll tackle the site impact first. Like every site, we've had to implement all the safety measures. We also had to implement temporary, what we call furloughs. So when certain sites stopped in other geographies, the way that the planning of the work base impacts the feeder sites or sites that are working on a sequence of components, because their cadence or their schedule has changed. It's also impacted schedule changes on the Mexico site, has with some unfortunate consequences in terms of having to temporarily close the site before we reopened. Some of the temporary closures were also helpful in taking the time to really reset the safety protocols. So when people came back to work from what we call a furlough or a work stoppage, they were able to come back to a very safe environment that had completely revamped security processes. So it's not specific to Mexico. It's a reality that has hit every Bombardier site at some course throughout the pandemic, all the way back to March. And in terms of the market recovering, I think I touched on a little bit. We're looking at flying recovering first, but really in terms of Bombardier, the metric that we look at is aircraft deliveries. For us this year, we're tracking to around 30% lower, as is the entire industry, in terms of aircraft deliveries and output. That is kind of the key metric for sites like Mexico. And over the next year, we're looking at a more, I guess, safe estimate for deliveries, looking to scope our company in about a 100 and 120 total aircraft deliveries range. So that will also impact, short-term growth in Mexico, but certainly we have the right base and the right processes to stabilize production and activities at that site as we wait for aircraft levels and flying to come back fully to normal. So we've taken all of the necessary measures up until now to really stabilize our production, stabilize what all of the output that each facility has. And of course, we're now in the process of consulting all of the sites, looking for process improvements, performance improvements, and productivity to get to a post-pandemic goal of those right aircraft rates.
Definitely super interesting insight. And going back to the supply chain topic, there is a question that says, can you tell us a little bit about your supply chain in Mexico, either Mexican companies or foreign companies operating in Mexico, and what kind of opportunities and challenges are there?
Well, I don't have specific insight into the companies that supply us. I think everyone's in the same boat in terms of making sure that they continue to operate on schedules and within the pandemic parameters. So I'd say on a global scale, the way that we're looking at sub-suppliers or sort of raw material suppliers is making sure that they remain viable, that they remain healthy, and in some cases evaluating how we can step in to secure the production materials that we need, what kind of help that they need. Obviously, as a larger company, we have access to governments, we have access to perhaps more mechanisms that could help these smaller companies. So it's something that we very carefully are looking at to make sure that the health of the cluster and the workforce remains stable throughout the pandemic and then for years to come.
Excellent. And one question again related to your product portfolio, we have this question that says, What are the products with bigger demand here in Mexico, and how has been the adoption of your latest products?
Well, I'll tackle that there, Mark. Basically, our portfolio is quite impressive in Mexico. We have the most Learjets of any other Latin American country based and operating out of Mexico. Also, the mid-range aircraft, such as the Challenger 350, is a phenomenal aircraft, as well as the Challenger 650. From the entire product line of the Challenger family, we've been very successful in that respect. So I would say that the light jet category, being the Learjet 75, also the Lear 45s from before, and the Lear 35s from many years ago, are still operating in live in Mexico. The Globals are, especially now with the newer Globals with more range, more power, operating out of Toluca, which is limiting to many airplanes, is we have very high expectations for the Global 7500 as well as Global 55 and 6500. So therefore, we see a great future going forward with all of our product lines, because it serves everything that the Mexican market needs.
All right, super interesting. Thank you for your answer. Now, I would like to go forward with the results of the poll question. Let's see what the people and the audience think about the industry in general, and maybe you can share with us your opinions. So we go to the first question that says, many people predicted that the pandemic would eventually break out. How would you rate the preparedness of the aviation industry for COVID-19? It seems that 37% of the people believe that the industry is not prepared. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, I think we've saw the industry progress through the different phases of the pandemic. If we rewind all the way back to February, March, where we started to see the pandemic, for instance, impact facilities like our Singapore service center first, then sort of make its way as it did to North America, there was a significant adjustment period. So just to give you a concrete example, we went from work processes where somebody being diagnosed with COVID would require a temporary shutdown of either an entire facility for a day or two to do what we call contact tracing and cleaning, to now being able to implement processes where teams are separated into what we call work bubbles. So contact tracing is already predetermined. And for instance, if worst case scenario, somebody would come in contact with their family or an outside source that is positive with COVID, it wouldn't necessarily warrant that scale of what we saw happen in March. So within about a month, we've significantly changed our processes to go from a kind of a basic preparedness or a more all-encompassing response to a much more targeted response as we learn to live and deal with this on a day-to-day basis. So I think I wouldn't qualify it as a preparedness. I'd say how quickly we've adapted in terms of responding to it and have gone back to really normal operations in the sense of the new normal of 2020. Sorry, Franco, can you say this?
Sí, yes, yeah. And going a little bit forward, related to an area that is super important for the industry, which is tourism. The second question is, what do you expect tourism travel to reach pre-pandemic levels again? And most of the people, almost half of the audience, believe that these levels are going to happen again on 2022. What are your opinions about this concern?
Well, I think first and foremost, tourism is very linked to the commercial aviation industry. So most of the tourism that occurs happens through commercial airlines, which I don't necessarily have leading indicators on from a business jet perspective. But what I can say is that we expect and we see business jet travel to resume faster than commercial travel. So for companies that are building and operating business jets, the recovery could be faster. we're looking at, even today, as we speak, about 70 to 80% of the usual flights that happen worldwide from a business aviation perspective occurring versus last year's level. Commercial is still lower than that. So we see a faster recovery to the normal amount of flying. That said, what we're seeing in business aviation, there is still a nuance. It's not 70 to 80% of fully normal flying in terms of the type of travel customers are doing. We see a lot more domestic travel, obviously still linked to border closures, but also more leisure traveling and personal flights than business. So there is a path to have business aviation back at 100% of volume levels in terms of flights. What customers are doing with their aircraft might be still very different for quite some time, but we're projecting that over the next 2 years there's going to be a normalcy.
Yeah, definitely, those are going to be really interesting.
I kind of agree with the stats that are popping up here for 2022 seem more favorable than obviously next year. Everything's going to depend on the vaccine, obviously, and how they come out and how effective it is going forward. But I agree with everything that Mark said. The executive side, executive travel is far more recuperating itself than the commercial side of the house. So we have high expectations going forward into 2021 with hopefully more growth in the executive travel area.
Okay, thank you very much to both of you. We have a third question that we already tackled in the previous session of Q&A that was related to, again, the pre-pandemic levels to the business travels. So I would like to go forward to the fourth question, which is a sub-topic. Which percentage of airlines do you expect to go bankrupt in the next 3 years? Do you see a near future in which this is going to eventually happen? 45% of our audience believe that the bankruptcy will be in around 10 and 20% of the airlines.
So in this case, it's perhaps relevant to share that Bombardier, in terms of its strategy, has exited the airline and commercial airline business through the past few years. So we've made some strategic moves to become a pure play business jet company. So certainly, I think in terms of our predictions in that space, we wouldn't be equipped to make them or speculate on airline health. What we want to see is a healthy aerospace industry with people flying, all the jobs that are generated on the ground, whether it's airlines or business aviation. I think we need to return to a healthy level. Certainly, flying is good for the global economy. It connects people. I think everyone is becoming tired of sitting at home and connecting virtually, and everyone would like to hop on a plane. So we certainly, first and foremost, would wish well to all airlines. We don't necessarily have airline customers anymore. We have fleet customers for business jets who are really becoming at the forefront of new demand for travel. So we see that as a positive trend, and we're hoping for a global airline recovery that helps both business aviation and commercial aviation.
All right, very good. Then we have the next question that is related to the global passenger traffic. How do you expect Mexico's role in the global passenger traffic to evolve in the coming 5 years? Almost 60% of the people believe that the passenger growth in line will be the global average.
So I think once again, from an airline perspective, because we don't deal with airlines as our customers going forward, perhaps we can talk a little bit about what opportunities there could be in business travel, whether it's domestic or foreign. So Bert, I know you're dealing a lot day to day with people and charter operators who are seeing demand for the aircraft. How would you qualify sort of any shifts in how air travel is being conducted on private jets within Mexico and outside?
Quite frankly, Mark, there's quite a charter operators in Mexico. There's quite a few of them that have been very active. I mean, there's certain of them that are flying 700 hours per year per aircraft. That's an amazing amount when you consider that the average flying of any normal aircraft is around 300 to 400 hours maximum, typically. So we've seen a lot of activity in the fractional ownership market as well. A lot of the pre-owned market. Mexico is fantastic and phenomenal as far as pre-owned aircraft sales goes. There's a lot of exchanging of airplanes going back and forth. Before the pandemic, it was business as usual. Obviously, with the pandemic, not only the pandemic, but also the political situation in Mexico with the new government taking place, it kind of stalled things out for a little bit. But now things have gotten back to not quite normal, but we're getting back to the regular pace as we see it. So the charter operators are much more active now than ever before, simply because the airlines are not flying the routes that they typically used to fly before. The demand is still there for local activity and for international travel as well. So I would say that, yeah, Mexico is continually growing. And I think this is only going to solidify the market even more for us going forward.
And going back to commercial matters, I would like to take a question from the audience. Sergio Angulo is asking, what do you expect in 2021 in terms of aircraft production? Are open orders being canceled? Can you share your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I can tackle this one here. There's no cancellations per se. You know, we're driving forward. Each model has a target number. We adjust that accordingly. Obviously, we've adjusted our delivery schedules for 2020 simply because of the pandemic. We had to do some adjustments. We will make some adjustments for next year. We've already done so. And so we're you know, this is business as usual. Life goes on with the pandemic, without the pandemic, and we're focused on delivering the maximum amount of aircraft that we can in every category. Yeah,
and right now, where we ended up in Q3 in terms of our directional plan for next year would be to build the company around 100 to 120 aircraft in terms of capacity. That brings us to profitable production. At the same time, you know, there's always flexibility in that system. So when we talk about being in the 100 or 120 aircraft range, it's a very directional number that's really used to scope our company's transformation exercise. And of course, within that system, we build in flexibility for higher production, but we certainly want to start from a stable base that is achievable.
All right, so we are in the last minutes of the session, and I would like to close with this last question that we have. So maybe you can share with us your thoughts, and maybe you also can include a final remark. So this is a question related to completely the Mexican market. It says, how do you expect Mexico's role in the global aerospace supply chain to evolve in the coming 5 years? I see that 47% of the audience, they believe that there will be the same prominence in the global aerospace supply chain. What are your thoughts about this? And maybe you also can share with us a final remark.
So I definitely agree. I think the Mexican aerospace market is definitely here to stay. There's opportunities for growth. The more companies invest, the more companies continue to operate, the bigger diversity you create in terms of the workforce. It's really important to keep working with the schools. So the future is only as good as the aerospace programs we have at local schools. So with that continuing, that will be one of the key deployments for either potential growth, for skill set diversification. So it's important that those programs remain healthy, that people continue to recruit students to help the aerospace industry, because what we need is that kind of sustainability from a manpower perspective. And as long as that remains strong, the aero cluster that has formed and the certain industries that have set in Mexico will be able to thrive for decades to come. In terms of product life cycles in aviation, we don't look at 1 to 2 year consumer product life cycles. A product takes 5 to 10 years of planning for 40 years of life. So none of these decisions are made very quickly. Everything is done carefully and to make sure that the talent base continues to support it on that scale. And what we aspire to in all of our sites is people with tenure of 20 to 30 years of experience. So most of our employees in Mexico have been with us from the beginning. So now we're coming on 15 years of experience. We think there's still probably easy room to double that, if not more. So I think in closing, Mexico's aerospace industry will be no different than everyone's aerospace industry. It's going to take a lot of collaboration, working with schools, working with the government, working with the customer base, the operators, to really galvanize this industry to make sure that it emerges from the pandemic, that it has the right framework, the right foundation to continue to be successful. And we're seeing a lot of great teamwork in that respect.
All right, very, very good. Thank you very much, Mark. I only would like to thank Bombardier to share with us a lot of knowledge, super important information to drive business in the Mexican market. I would like to thank also our speakers, Mark, Humberto. I don't know if you have a final remark, if you would like to say something as closing.
No, for my part, we thank you for the opportunity of participating here in this webinar. We feel honored to be here representing our brand in Mexico. Mexico is near and dear to my heart. I spend more time in Mexico than I do here in Florida. So to all of the participants out here, thank you so much for this opportunity. And we look forward to continuing long-lasting relationship that we've already established with Mexico. And once again, thank you very much.
Yes,
All
thank
right.
you. No, thank you very much indeed. This has been a pleasure to participate, and we hope to see you all in person soon.
All right, we hope that as well, Mark. Thank you very much. And of course, thanks to our audience to be part of this session, to share with us your opinions. As final, we have a request of someone that is willing to have again the contact information of Humberto. So to close this, to finish this, I want to put the last slide of the presentation. And then the webinar will be closed. You can find a summary of this webinar in our platform, mexicobusinessnews.com, and also, of course, in YouTube. You can see the repetition of the session at any time you want. Thank you very much. Thanks to be part of this, and let's continue to make this industry better.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody has any questions whatsoever regarding any of the models we've discussed here today, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, I'm fluent in Spanish, Portuguese, whatever you want to talk about. We'd be delighted to share the information regarding our products, and would love to work with you and your team going forward. Thanks again.